there has been quite a bit of mystery surrounding the Danish side of my family. This was probably due to the family's secrecy and lack of available records. As my interest and skills in my family history research grew, I began finding discrepancies in the stories and information that I collected. Here is one of those stories. As a short preface, because this story deals with many people with the same first name, I will be using either a nickname or their first name with their maiden name to limit confusion. My maternal grandfather, Galen, was the son of Martin and Hazel Nielsen, growing up in Portland, Oregon with his older sister, Donna. As I asked more questions, I learned that he also had a half-sister through his father, Martin, but was never raised by him. Martin was much older than his wife, Hazel, and it didn't surprise me that he may have had some relationships before he met and married her. Back in 2010, Galen's half-sister, Catherine Marie, who went by Kay, passed away at the age of 91. Many of her items were willed to her brother. A few years later, these items were made known to me, including several old photographs, her birth certificate, and a Danish Bible that belonged to her grandmother, Catherine Clausen. I learned a lot about Kay through these items, but one question still wasn't fully answered. Who was Kay's mother, and what happened to her? I knew from her birth certificate that her mother's name was Catherine Nygaard, born in Denmark. All Kay was ever told about her mother was that she went back to Denmark and was never heard from again. Martin married Hazel shortly after Kay's birth, and he never took ownership of her as his child. She was raised by Martin's mother, Catherine Clausen, until adulthood. I decided to dig deeper into Kay's mother, Catherine Nygaard, and what became of her. Since I was told that she returned to Denmark, I attempted to find the ship manifest of her returning to Denmark, but had no luck. I felt my only option was to backtrack to when Catherine Nygaard stepped foot in America and follow the trail back to Denmark. That did the trick. I quickly found the New York passenger list from Copenhagen, Denmark in March of 1916 for a Catherine Nygaard. On most ship manifests at that time, each passenger had to answer several questions about their visit. One question stated that if they were going to join a relative, they must list their name and address. Her answer threw me for a loop. Grandfather M. O. Nielsen, 411 Ray Street, Seattle, Washington. The manifest also listed her father's name, Johannes Nygaard, in Denmark. If Catherine Nygaard was coming to the United States to visit her grandparents, that would make Marcus and Catherine Nielsen those grandparents. But that didn't make sense. Marcus and Catherine Nielsen had two sons, Martin and Frederick. Shortly after Martin was born, they immigrated to the United States. There had to be another child for this story to make any sense. Because the manifest mentioned Catherine Nygaard's father, I spent the next several hours searching through Danish records to find as much as I could about Johannes and see how he is connected to my relatives in the United States. It led me to a church record with information about his birth. Johannes Simonsen Nygaard, born 27th of September 1876 to Peter Christian Nygaard and Catherine Clausen. The record indicated that his parents were not married and that his guardian was his parental grandfather. Catherine Clausen had another son? What circumstances would have led her to abandoning her child? It was almost 7 years later before she married Marcus Nielsen. This made me wonder if anyone else even knew about the existence of Johannes, and if he was at all a part of her life. They obviously stayed in contact because eventually his daughter, Catherine Nygaard, traveled to America, with Catherine Clausen as her sponsor. Johannes married and had 7 children, Catherine being his eldest. When she decided to travel to the United States in 1916, she was only 17 years old. I believe the purpose of this trip was to work and start a new life in a land of opportunity. When she arrived, she lived with Marcus and Catherine for at least a couple of years, according to some city directories. She unexpectedly became pregnant just a year and a half after arriving in the States and gave birth to Catherine Marie in August of 1918. Kay was abandoned by her mother and raised by her great-grandmother. My grandfather Galen thought he had a half-sister, but in reality, she was his first cousin and half-sister. If Martin was truly her father, Catherine Nygaard would have gotten pregnant by her uncle. The only source we have for this is her birth certificate, where he was put as the father. We may never know. Now, we still haven't answered a question. Where did Catherine Nygaard go after abandoning Kay? I had no luck pinpointing her whereabouts in Denmark after Kay's birth. I then had the thought, what if she never left? What if she stayed in the States? I did a relatively basic search in a few different databases that I was familiar with and made an assumption. Maybe she got married. I searched for a marriage record for a Catherine Nygaard around 1920. I got a hit in Seattle, of all places. Catherine married Frederick Valentine Wagner on November 1st, 1919. She never actually left and lived in the same city that Kay grew up in. Catherine and Fred went on to have 3 children, Margaret, June, and Jean. As I began adding all the newfound information to my family tree, I came across a profile on Ancestry.com that eventually led me to connect to several of Catherine's living grandchildren. Just as Kay's family didn't know about what happened to her mother, Catherine Nygaard's descendants were completely in the dark about the existence of Kay and her family. There were many mysteries solved within these few generations, including finding Catherine Clausen's oldest son. Catherine Nygaard's life is shrouded in mystery, and I think she wanted to keep it that way. Although we don't have all the answers, time will reveal many hidden things. I wish Kay would have been alive to learn about the family that she never knew. Kay always sought for a sense of belonging. It's no surprise after discovering all the trauma and abandonment she experienced in her life. By learning about these people, I have been able to develop a strong connection with the past, and I'm grateful for the new relationships I have received in return.